Unfortunately, Paul had another meeting that he needed to attend, so he asked me to do an introduction. My name is Daniela. I am the executive director of the recently formed Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust. Just as a super umbrella, a bigger umbrella of decentralized technology projects, including all the Hyperledger projects. We'll be talking about Hyperledger Cacti today, and as well as Trust over IP and some other new projects that we've brought in. At the Linux Foundation, we've always believed that the blockchain ecosystem was going to be multi-chained, and this complexity keeps getting harder and harder. We actually have a panel this afternoon around the topic of interoperability. There's many approaches to interoperability within the ecosystems around the world. One of the early things that at the Linux Foundation under Hyperledger we figured out was that we needed to address interoperability before interoperability became a problem, right? So very early on in 2015, 2016, 2017 even, moving assets from one blockchain to another, moving assets from a public blockchain to a private blockchain, these were all things that weren't really problems. But today, if you look at the ecosystem and you see the amount of chains that are out there, you see the kind of ecosystems that are being created that are multi-chains, whether with blockchains and of course as well with stablecoins, interoperability becomes more and more important. So the community at the Linux Foundation since 2017 have been working on this. We have some great teams, and one of the projects that actually started in our innovation area, which is called our labs, was at the time called Cactus, and now is called Cacti. Over the years, we've had organizations and ecosystems come and deliver, basically contribute plugins into the Cacti project. We have been working with Stellar. Stellar has been part of Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust before with Hyperledger since 2017 when they joined to support our foundation. We'll have some more news about our Stellar partnership in the next month or so. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to someone who's actually fixing and bringing solutions to markets around interoperability with real-world needs as ecosystems, and particularly in the permissioned blockchain ecosystems that are out there that need to interact with public blockchains, and how to use Stellar. So Marcelo is the CEO of Cheesecake Labs. They recently made a fairly large contribution. They were a great team to work with in an open source community we value so much when developers come and they understand and they very quickly get onboarded to these contributions. And this is really how we build ecosystems that the enterprise adopts worldwide. So Marcelo, thank you again for all your contributions to the Linux Foundation, and I'm looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you so much, Daniela, for this introduction. And it's super exciting to be here sharing our first contribution with Hyperledger, connecting with Stellar, especially because it's been maybe 6 months, Daniela, since we met at Paris Blockchain Week. And to give a little bit more color into what we have built and why and how this can potentially unleash and empower the community to build different products, I wanted to highlight a little bit first, what's the state of interoperability today, highlighting why both private and blockchains must coexist, and remembering all of us what are the potential benefits of both types of networks, what are current solutions today, and why there was still a gap. And then I want to highlight why Cheesecake and some other companies are so interested in using Hyperledger, Bezu, and some other networks for some specific applications. And then I'll finally deep dive a little bit in describing how the Hyperledger Cacti works as a framework for interoperability. I'll mention what Cheesecake has actually built. And finally, I'll show a demo so that you can actually see an asset moving cross-chain between Stellar Network and Bezu. And also mention some other ideas so that you can potentially have some more inspiration to build new use cases based and leveraging this technology that the Hyperledger community built over the years that Cheesecake complemented with this connection on Stellar. So first, quick introduction. I'm Marcelo, CEO of Cheesecake, and we are basically a software consultancy design and engineering company. And as a service company, we have been working with clients for more than 10 years, basically helping our clients to build digital products, either Web 2 or Web 3 products. So depending on what your business needs to build, we might be able to help you. Happy to discuss after this session. So finally, talking about blockchains, public and private, I'm sure most of the people here are familiar with a lot of, and dozens of of public blockchains. They have been in the market for more time. Usually, a lot of public blockchains, they serve slightly different purposes, and sometimes they solve the same problem in a different way. Out of curiosity, out of everyone here, who has ever built any product with a public blockchain? I'm sure that the folks from Cheesecake have. Yeah, and what about a private blockchain? Has anyone here built something with a private blockchain? The central bank counts, yes. Interesting, yeah, so let's find a way to connect both of you to potentially create more usability together. So for everyone who has used a public blockchain, you might be familiar with all the benefits. So in general, public blockchains are very decentralized, very open, very transparent. They usually have an explorer that allows anyone to see what exactly is happening on the blockchain. And because they're open, they usually have more use cases, more people using, and also because they have been in the market for more time. But if you are a private bank, a private institution, or a regulated institution, you might not want everyone to be aware of everything that's happening on your ledger. So for them, having some sort of privacy might be important, and this is where private blockchain really comes into play. Also, by leveraging a private blockchain, it might be easier for your institution to comply with some regulations and to comply with some technical issues regarding information security, for example. So using both blockchains and trying to leverage the best of them is super important for the ecosystem. But today, when you try to connect those blockchains, even if you're only using public blockchain, things are not super easy. If you are a worker, for example, and if you have received a payment in USDT on Solana, and if you want to cash out in USDC on Stellar, usually you need to go to a DEX or a SEX, or you need to find a very good wallet like Decaf. So you need to go through a lot of steps to be able to really get to the point of and achieve what you want. You might be looking to achieve a liquidity between two tokens, but that liquidity might exist in one specific blockchain, and your assets might be somewhere else. So fragmentation of liquidity is an issue today. And usually, whenever you're building a new product, in the very beginning, you need to make some trade-offs in terms of decisions. Either you go to a path where you're leveraging a blockchain which is super fast, super cheap, super easy to use, or you go somewhere else where there's a richer DeFi ecosystem, or you go somewhere else where there's more privacy for your solution. It's very hard to get the best of all different blockchains. Of course, as some have mentioned here today, there are a couple of solutions out there which already exist to solve these interoperability problems. One of them, one of the possibilities is to use a bridge, for example, and this type of solution have been in the market for more time. One of the concerns is that some bridges, they tend to be a little bit more centralized, and some of them, like Nomad, have been hacked in the last years. And then, if you're building solutions and if you need to connect EVM-based blockchains, then the CCIP protocol from Chainlink, which has been created in the last few years, might be a good solution for EVM-based blockchains. But then, if you need to connect private blockchains, maybe layer 0 solutions might be a better fit because they can actually connect public and private blockchains with more flexibility. But still, layer 0 would require your institution to trust some other institutions who are acting as oracles or relays in the middle. So your institution might not feel comfortable with trusting other institutions that you might not necessarily know. So Cheesecake noticed that there was this gap between a good solution for institutions who wanted to connect solutions based on Hyperledger, Besu, Fabric, and others with a very good and public blockchain like Stellar. So this problem does exist, and then why Cheesecake became so interested in working with Hyperledger and solving this problem? Well, one first thing is that Cheesecake has been working with Stellar for more than 4 years. And as all of you here are at this Meridian conference, I'm sure you're all familiar with the great benefits that Stellar as a public blockchain offers. It's super fast, super scalable, it's cost efficient, and it has a very unique on and off ramp infrastructure around the globe, which is very unique to Stellar. And then when it comes to Besu, the main reasons why a lot of institutions have been using Besu in the last few years is because, of course, it's private, so it adds more privacy to your solution, and it adds this sense of control on your assets. Stellar also has a lot of features that gives you control of the asset, but Besu adds this to another layer. And Besu is EVM compatible, so this allows any institutions to create a solution that is private, but at the same time that could eventually integrate with the ecosystem on DeFi or on Ethereum or in some other network because of this compatibility with EVM. And also it's open source, so it gives this sense of resilience and innovation over time. And it's much easier to use compared to other private blockchains. And this is one of the reasons why the Central Bank of Brazil has selected and has chosen Hyperledger Besu for its Drex project. And for those who are still unfamiliar with, Drex project is basically a wholesale CBDC and tokenization platform that the Central Bank of Brazil has been creating and innovating over the past few years. And in general, unless Fabio Araújo, who is here, changes his mind, the idea is for this Drex project to be a wholesale CBDC, so allowing transactions between the central bank and financial institutions in Brazil to happen on-chain, on Hyperledger Besu. The idea is that, at least in the beginning, the CBDC won't reach the final users, but because this internal infrastructure will be on-chain, the settlement time will be faster and cheaper, so better services could be created for the final users. So there's a lot of potential demand in the future for more institutions in Brazil, in particular, to be using Besu, and Cheesecake is super interested in allowing the ecosystem from Stellar to also connect with this ecosystem in Brazil. So that's why we built, that's why we actually enhanced everything that was already built on Hyperledger Cacti, so that this connection between those networks would be possible today. So what's this Hyperledger Cacti, how it works? So it's basically a very flexible and modular framework for interoperability across many different chains. Anyone can scan this QR code and can read the whole history on how the Linux Foundation created this framework over the past year and how this framework has been evolving. And before showing the framework itself, I would like to touch on some key concepts that we need to consider when we talk about interoperability, mainly to show you how powerful Cacti as a framework is. So one key concept that we need to consider is that when we talk about interoperability, we might want to connect, for example, smart contracts who are in the same network and need to share information between themselves. We might want to connect ledgers who are very similar because they run on the same protocol. For example, it could be the case where we're connecting Hyperledger Besu and Ethereum, which run on the same protocol. Or you could have the need to actually integrate and connect blockchains which are very different, and they run on very different protocols, and they might have very different settlement times, for example. So you might want to connect Besu with Stellar, or Fabric with Ethereum, or Polkadot with some other blockchain, and those blockchains, one might have a settlement time of 5 seconds, while the other might have a settlement time of 10 minutes. So all this orchestration and all this complexity must be considered, and Cacti as a framework allows for all these connections in a very safe and secure way. Also, I wanted to highlight that everything that we are sharing today is from a very technical perspective, because this allows the technical layer to be integrated. And when you talk about interoperability, there are a lot of layers that should be considered. So from a technical perspective, then of course, there should be a solution that allows different blockchains to be technically connected so that we can achieve everything that a company and the business wants. But then different organizations, they also need to be in alignment so that they have the same vision and the goal on why that specific product and that specific integration should exist. So they should be in alignment, for example, on the vision for the product, and based on the goal of this integration, they will decide, for example, what should happen in case a transaction fail in one network. Should we keep trying, or should we cancel and revert back all the transactions? And then, of course, there is a regulation layer, because on top of everything, the organizations might be in consensus, they might be in agreement in terms of what they want to build, but then depending on the regulation, on where this tokens should be transacted, different countries might have different regulations. So Cacti solves for this specific part in terms of the technical integration. So that's why it's super important to have business and product people and lawyers in the room as well discussing. And one final concept, which is super important, I think, for us to consider when we talk about interoperability, is that you might want to have different types of integration depending on the why, depending on what you want to achieve with your integration. So you might want just data or information to be transferred and not the token itself. So there could be a case where you want to get the price of Ethereum and US dollars, for example, from one network, and you want this information to go to another network so that you can rebalance your portfolio, for example. So just the information is passing from one network to the other, not the data itself. Or, of course, you might want to actually transfer the asset, and this could be the case where you want to get one asset from one network. You might want to use a solution where you are locking this asset, creating a reference of this collateral, and then you can mine the asset in the other network, where in this case, you would be actually transfer the asset from one network to the other. Or you might actually just want to orchestrate transactions where the assets, they will still keep in the same network, but you want transactions on Stellar, for example, to happen simultaneously or almost at the same time as transactions happen on the other network. So it really depends on what exactly you want to achieve. But the point is, all those different cases, everything is possible on Cacti as a framework, because the framework itself is just a standard. And it really sets the basic guidelines and the standards on how those different interoperability challenges could be achieved based on what the Linux Foundation has studied and evolved over the past years. So we won't deep dive in all those different diagrams. If you want, we can discuss those later, especially with our engineers here. But the point is that it's very, very modular, very flexible, so really any organization who wants to connect public and private blockchains following the same standard that the Linux Foundation has evolved over the past years can get the benefit of Cacti as a framework. And then, of course, there are a couple of ledgers which are supported today. And what I mean by supported, it means that there are connectors to some specific ledgers. So in the beginning of this year, there was already a connector for Ethereum, Polkadot, Fabric, Bezu, Aries, and Corda. And there was not yet a connector for Stellar, and this is what Cheesecake built. So we basically built not the framework itself, but one specific connector, which is now open source and anyone can use. And then because those connectors are already there, created, any company can actually create solutions where they are integrating depending on their specific use case, assets from those networks together, and then it's only up to the company to actually build their specific use cases. And because, again, Cacti is super flexible, companies can choose to run their applications in a very centralized way if they want, or they can also actually choose to run their applications in a decentralized way, trusting other entities to be part of their specific ecosystem. And the idea of Cacti is that over time, all those different organizations will be running their specific applications, either centralized or decentralized, transferring assets or transferring data, or connecting assets from those different networks according to what exactly they want to achieve. So here there's one QR code with the open source code of the Stellar connector that Cheesecake built. If anyone wants to check this in more detail, just scan and you can, or if you want to discuss this, we can talk after the session as well. And here I want to show basically two things. One is a very simple demo so that everyone can actually see how an asset would be transferred from one network to the other. And a quick disclaimer is that This demo has been implemented in a very step-by-step so that we can actually see everything that's happening. Of course, if it was a final use case for production, we could implement with a very good UX where everything would happen with just a button. And then I want to show some additional possible use cases so that you can mainly have like new ideas for your business. So in this use case, it's super simple. We are basically trying to allow Alice to send a token, which is currently on Stellar, so that Charlie will receive it on Bezu. So we are basically connecting those two networks with Hyperledger Cacti as a framework. And what will happen in the demo is that Alice will send her token, which lives on Stellar, to a bridge. Once she sends this token, the bridge or Cacti will create a reference to this token. And once Alice has this reference to the token is actually escrowed in the Cacti as a framework. So because she now has the reference as a collateral to this token, she's able to mint this token on Bezu. And then once she has the token on Bezu, she's able to share with Charlie or whoever she wants. And then it's also possible to take this token back to the other network by burning the token in the second network and unlocking the token in the first one. So step by step, that would mean, yeah, the video is playing, so it's very step by step so that we can actually understand everything that's happening. So we are creating the token on Stellar as a network. So now Alice has some tokens. Let's see, yeah, so the setup is done. So now Alice is going to escrow some of her tokens on the bridge using this framework of Cacti. And now once the tokens are there, you can see that she no longer has the initial value, but some of the tokens will be here in the bridge. And then a reference for this collateral will be created and it will be in possession of Alice. Once Alice has this reference to the collateral, she's actually able to mint tokens on Bezu by using this reference of the collateral which are holding the other network. And then once she has minted the assets here in Bezu, she's able to transfer to whoever she wants. Then so it's of course possible to redeem them back to the first network. So this is just a very basic asset transfer network. And one key point that I wanted to highlight is that because Stellar is very strong for payments, thanks to the very rich and unique on and off ramp infrastructure that Stellar has across many different countries, it can be very powerful to connect a private network like Fabric or Bezu with this rich ecosystem of Stellar. And the possibilities are many. It really depends on what can make sense for your business. So one option, for example, could be for you to use Fabric to issue or to tokenize some tokens on one private on a private network, and then you can choose to receive to allow your customers to make payments using USDC or EURC. And then once your customers make your payment to purchase the asset, you can transfer the asset to the user. And then, of course, the asset would still, the token itself would still be on Fabric, but you can orchestrate those transactions. Or you can actually make the opposite if you want. You can have assets, a carbon credit, for example, on Bezu, and then for whoever is holding the carbon credit, you can be paying a yield for your customers on USDC or EURC, so that your customers will have the benefit and will go to whatever off-ramp location and cash out in local currency. Or you can also be super creative. You can tokenize real estates, for example, on Stellar, and then pay a yield or whatever you want on Ethereum or some other blockchain. So really, any orchestrated movements between those private blockchains which are currently supported and those public blockchains which are now supported as well can be used today with a lot of flexibility, following the same standard. And with this, I just wanted to finalize showing that by creating like a real and a better standard so that public and private blockchains can be communicated and worked together, we are now able to build better products for everyone in the market. So, and the technology is there, the foundation has already been set by Hyperledger Foundation. If there is ever a need to create or to connect with a new blockchain, it's just a matter of creating one additional connector. And this is one thing that Cheesecake built in a month. So it's relatively easy to build, and it's there. It's just up to us to go and build new use cases by leveraging and empowering this same standard so that everyone in the ecosystem is speaking the same language. And that's all for today. I'll be here around today and tomorrow in case anyone has more questions.